Analyze a game that Jesorak sent in. This is for my member best game thread where members can post any game, best game, worst game, whatever. I'll analyze it. Anyway, let's have a look and see what happens. Okay, we have the Caro-Kann defense, and this is a very rock-solid opening for black. It's hard to get any kind of advantage against it, but as long as you follow the basic principles and develop, you should be fine. And there's many ways to play this, most of which are beyond the scope of this video. And let's see. There's an interesting move here to play. It was also playable last move. I just want to show it. It's to play Queen E2 here. Now that's not the best move, but it's a tricky move. The point is, here I'll show you the point. The point is you're trying to sucker black, and people have done this and they'll continue to do it. If black continues, normally you have this little surprise. Checkmate. Okay, well, anyway. It's generally not a good move simply because black should see it. He'll probably play something good like knight here. Okay? And now you've succeeded in shutting in your bishop. And if you go about your way and develop, black will just trade and develop his other knight, and trade on e4, develop his other knight, and chase your queen. I just wanted to show it. I'm feeling whimsical today. Okay. Now, this is all, as far as I know, this is all theory, and there's not a great deal happening here yet. Both sides are getting developed. That's one good thing about this particular game, because both sides are following the principles that they need to do. They're getting developed. But let's stop and take a look for a second and try to come up with a strategy here. Okay, in other words, what can white do? White wants to, arguably want to win every game. What can white do to win this game? Well, what's the first thing he has to do? Well, finish his development. Okay. Then what does he do? Well, it depends on how black completes his development. For the moment, if you just take a look, this bishop here, its outlook is bleak. Okay, at least for the moment. How is black going to get that bishop in play? Well, the answer is for a while he isn't, but eventually black will be able to get it in play, and we'll talk about that as we get going. It needs to find a home, because without moving that bishop, this queen rook is stuck in play, and black would be giving odds of a bishop and a rook, and we can't have that. So, but at the same time, look at the back ranks. They are exactly equal. Okay. Everything matches, mirror image. The only difference in the position is the position of the king's bishop, and the fact that white has a little better central control. White's pawns on c4 and d4 are a little better posted than the black pawns on c6 and e6. So it's not much to go on, but the key thing to do is first finish the development. Okay? So I like b3. It prepares to put the dark squared bishop on the long diagonal, and white eventually wants, if he can, would like to activate it by opening up the position with d5, or if it happens, if black eventually pushes either one of his pawns, which black often does in the Caro-Kann at the right moment, then white can make a pawn exchange and that bishop will be activated. Okay, so black decides to find a home for his bishop, and he's going to put it on b7 and maybe take advantage of that long diagonal at some point. So not much has changed in the last couple moves. The position once again looks very symmetrical, the difference being here's the difference. I'm going to put them in red this time. Everything else is an exact mirror image, and again, both sides are getting developed, and now it's just a question of where we go from here. And we don't know where we go until we complete our development. Okay, so let's talk about this move, Queen C2, for a moment before we play it. What's the alternative to Queen C2? Okay, there's nothing wrong with Queen C2, but what's the alternative if we're going to develop the Queen? Well, Queen D2 and Queen E2. Now, why would one of those moves possibly be better? Well, the idea of putting the Queen on C2, which White played, it has latent threats of taking on this square, H7. Now, we can't do it now. This knight's in the way, okay? But it's something that could happen. Putting it on E2, one advantage of putting the Queen on E2 is that, and there's nothing making this knight move, but if the knight moves, maybe White can get Queen E4 in and threaten the mate, which Black should see, but it might cause Black to weaken his position trying to guard it. So another idea of Queen E2, White, at least I think it fits me a little bit better as a better move, is that it helps protect this knight on E5. Protect it against what, you ask? Well, maybe this bishop will threaten it one day with C5, and White may not want to accept double pawns. It'd shatter his kingside pawn structure. But none of this is forced. None of this is happening yet. But there's never anything wrong with just completing your development as White is doing. And here it causes a reaction from Black. Black didn't need to play G6. Okay, there was nothing making Black play that. So it's, in a way, it's kind of an unforced error. How do we take advantage of that? Well, all we do is develop. Now it seems like White's move makes sense, but is it the best move? What White plays is Queen C3. And this has visions of eventually administering a checkmate on G7. So there's nothing wrong with that plan. But what else was there? Is there something better? Okay, and that's a good question. This position is basically even. Again, we're so symmetrical, it's hard to get anywhere. But one thing we can do is get this rook into play, okay? And I kind of like this move just in the general principle that it develops this rook, which is screaming to get in the game. Now, how do we follow this up? Well, ideally, what we would like to do is eventually get D5 in, and if the D file opens up, get some kind of discovery against the Black Queen. Well, that's a long way off, and by the time we're ready for that, maybe Black will move his queen. Okay, so nothing wrong with Queen C3, but putting that rook into play first might be better. Okay. Now Black seems to invite White to push D5, and my question is it a good move or not? Now let's talk about it. Okay, if we push D5, first off, we're giving up control of C5, but we still have control over E5. So it looks like a natural move, but it's going to run into a little bit of a headache. And here's the headache. Okay, bishop G7. Okay. Now we've got to stop and take care of business here. Our queen is loose. Okay, and then there comes an exchange. Now we have given up a pawn for this. Is that good or is it not? Yes and no. Okay, for one, for the price of the pawn, white's got a nice outpost for his knight. This bishop is shut in, but the best I can see white can do from this point is win this pawn back, and then where's white's advantage? Well, it's not really there. So white doesn't have a lot of compensation for the pawn sacrificed. Meanwhile, black will bring this knight into play and then get it into e4. I don't think white has enough here. And one of the reasons is because white's made a couple of piece exchanges here too. Well, actually just one piece exchange. So knight d7, going the wrong way. Knight d7 kind of exposes the drawback with queen c3. He's daring white to play d5. Say, go ahead, I'll be fine. Okay, whoops, he doesn't play that. What white does is plays instead knight d2. Well, dang it, forget about this. One of the problems with this way they do their PGN, if you play a sideline, it replaces it and makes it the main line. Okay, let's talk about this move for a second before we play it. What else is playable here? How about let's get one. Suppose we get a rook in play, and again, like I say, I want to focus on development. I want to get this rook into play. Now, I'm trying this rook as an example. There's nothing wrong with putting this rook over here, okay? And I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, just suppose, for instance, black goes ahead with his plan, okay, and then this is just a possibility. It's not forced. Okay, notice how three of white's men are defending this e5 square. Okay, do you see that? There's no activity. There's no activity for those pieces. Now, suppose black just goes about his business and works on what he should work on, his development. Let's see. Let's actually, I wanted to do this for, wait. It's white's move. Okay. Now we've got some discovered threats. Now black just continues with his development. Okay. More pressure on f4. Has white really gained anything here? We'd like to get a rook into d6 and get doubled. Now here's one of the ideas behind bringing this rook over to d1. We clear b1 so the bishop can drop all the way back and keep this, and we've gotten this rook in the game as a result. But it seems that black has managed to equalize this position. White cannot play rook to d6. Black will just rook takes, pawn takes, bishop takes, and here I'll show you. Take this. Now you have to take this, and we lose a piece. So we can't do this. And one drawback with putting the knight on e5 is that it goes and trades another piece. But there's nothing making us put the knight on e5. Suppose we just develop. Okay. Now what can happen is c5, and now suddenly black's looking pretty good here. This pawn is pinned. We can't take. Black is threatening to mess up the white pawn structure. Okay, so now let's bring this bishop back. Now we covered f3. Now this knight's pinned. Now black's getting activated. Black's getting his pieces into play. We can't move the knights because it's pinned. So let's how do we unpin it? Well, we come. It's still pinned if we move it over here because B2 is covered. So it seems we have to come back here, and my best guess is black has equalized this position, and although white's got a slight development advantage. Both of his rooks are in play, and the black rooks aren't. White does have an outside pawn majority, which gives him some winning chances. And we can tickle the queen. Oh, that seems to be a good move. And let's see, we'll take it. Hey, maybe this is going somewhere, simply because white's ahead in development. You got to be careful, though. Black can do more on the long diagonal with his bishop than white can. I don't know. I think white's a little bit better here. Get ready to double the rooks, and we have a battle on our hands. Anyway, that's just one possibility, and it's all focused and predicated upon getting pieces developed. See, knight d2, there's nothing wrong with the move knight d2, but it doesn't develop these last two guys. That's why you got to focus, get them in the game before you conduct these operations. Okay, so black replies with bishop f6 anyway. Now knight e4. This pawn is still pinned. Now, it looks like white's getting somewhere with this next move. But, once again, the fly in the ointment is these rooks are not developed. Okay? And it looks like white, like I say, white's getting somewhere. Now, knight takes, and white's picked up the bishop pair for what it's worth. What else could white do here? Well, just go back and develop. Once again, there is nothing ever wrong with developing your pieces. Don't make exchanges. Develop. Okay, so either one of those rook moves might have led to white with a tiny advantage. Because I think the game, even though this looks good, it looks like it's just not enough to get an advantage from. So white has the two bishops for what it's worth, but he still hasn't finished his development. But then again, black hasn't either. So what's white's strategy now? Well, objectively, you'd like to trade queens, rooks, and the dark squared bishops. If you do that, you've got great winning chances, bishop versus knight ending. But that's a long way off. So what we're going to have to do is what white doesn't do. White does not develop these rooks yet. Okay, they got to get in the game. Okay, things can happen if you get them into the center files. If you start opening up lines. Okay, so bishop e4. It looks good. It pins the pawn. Black unpins it. White's making little threats, but black has them covered. Here we're at move 24, and these rooks have still not been developed. Okay, got to get them in the game. Now this doesn't look right, but it's a good move, simply because black is just rock solid. White can't exploit the weakness that's created on e6. And now black finds the way to open up the game, open up the center. And if white does nothing, black will just push his pawn to e4. So white makes an exchange. Now the queen's under attack. And who's got... Let's stop and take stock of development. Black is ahead in development now, simply because this rook has developed and this rook hasn't. So here we are at move 24, and white has not completed his development. So it's kind of hard for white to get any kind of advantage. I just showed that one example earlier when the rooks developed. When the center opened, white got a little bit more of a better position out of it all. Okay, so black just is happy to trade pieces here. Now white's gotten rid of the dark squared bishops. If white can get rid of the queens and the rooks, white has winning chances, especially with a lot of the pieces. I mean, a lot of the black pawns on white squares. So white makes another mistake here. What's wrong? What's wrong with just developing? Get this rook onto the open file. There's nothing wrong with it. It's with that, black can oppose it, but hey, that's okay. Let him. It's going to lead to more trades. Like I said, get rid of the queens and the rooks, and white wins. Okay, I'm not saying this is the best move, but what about queen g3? I mean, this gives black a chance to trade queens and a set of rooks. I'm not saying black will, but it gives him a chance to. So, if rook takes, well, actually you have to take the queen first. Queen takes, pawn takes, and if rook takes, you're ready to play rook check and trade rooks, because black will have to do that or lose a pawn. Then you play this ending out, bishop versus knight. With pawns on both sides of the board, white has great winning chances. So, but you've got to get the guys in the men in the game. Now, black can avoid a queen trade. Black does not have to trade queens, but white can strive to make some progress. Let's see. Let's put the queen on f7. We can come back and do this check if we want. Get the other rook developed on an open file. You always have to think about development, because those two rooks of whites aren't doing them a bit of good. Okay? They're still on their original square. Well, the rook on f1 is not on its original square, but it hasn't come in the game anymore. Okay? So bishop d1, the idea is to win a pawn, but black will see that, and now white has succeeded in not in unconnecting his rooks. So black just goes back. He's happy as a clam. White pins the knight. Well, that's fine. Just break the pin. Now white rectifies his error, his earlier error, and gets the rooks connected. And black's getting aggressive. Black's ahead in development. And now black seizes the open file. White still has not developed his rooks. On move 30, white has still not developed his rooks. And that's one of the reasons why it's an even game. Now finally, here one comes, rook fe1. But black is better posted here. Now, at first glance, it seems like this might be a mistake, simply because it leads to some exchanges and gives black some weak pawns. But black's happy to. Black's not trying to win. Black's just trying to stay even. Okay. So this does create a weakness, but black has them covered. Okay. Now we're threatening a pawn, and we're threatening to play queen g5 check, winning another pawn. So black covers that with a threat. Now who has the better queen here? Black does. Who has the better rook here? Black does. White's one thing going for him is that black has some isolated pawns. Okay, so rook d1, and I didn't mention this is a turn-based game. I think I move every 3 days. Rook f3, and now white gets aggressive with his queen, and here I'm puzzled. The game score ends, and white won. Now I don't know how white won. Did black forget about the game and lose on time? Did black think he was losing and resign? I don't know, but the game is still even. White, it looks like White's getting somewhere. He's threatening a rook check and threatening to stick this rook on the 7th rank, and he's threatening to play queen takes c6, but Black has resources here, namely rook d3. That works. Okay, the first idea is it stops the rook penetration to either of those squares. It threatens to win the rook takes rook check, and also it plans to bring the rook back to d6 if White gets off the file, and then the weakness on c6 is covered. I don't think White can necessarily afford to take. Now Black has this monster pawn. Ouch. White could lose this very easily. You know, just example. If you go gobbling pawns, this check can be. I mean, this can be very embarrassing. I don't know. White has to resort to. I don't know. White can win the pawn back. If the king comes up to either square, which it must, there's a queen fork. But Black can just stick his queen here, and White's going to have to settle for a draw. You know, there's nothing to stop this pawn from. Once White stops checking, this pawn goes here, and when White stops checking again, this pawn goes there. Game over. So I don't understand why White won, but what am I to say? But anyway, it is a good game. It does show that that even though White doesn't finish his development until move 31, that the Caro-Kann is not an opening that you need to fear about losing to if you play it correctly. White didn't try to exploit it by trying to attack prematurely and see it blow up in his face. It's not a bad game at all. And for what it's worth, you know, it's holding a draw against somebody with a slightly higher rating, so that's good. There were no glaring blunders from either side. It's just the little strategic things that I pointed out where White might have been able to get a little bit more out of things. This is what separates the difference between you guys at your level and players at my level. We can see it a little bit more and find a little bit more out of things. But here, like I say, just the game score. Let's just back up. Whoops, went too far back. Here we are at move 30, and White has not developed his rooks. Well, Black at least had one developed, and it was in a defensive mode, but Black's just trying to hold on, maintain equality, and not lose. The question is, can White somehow get into an ending with bishop versus knight? And chances are he can't, simply because Black's able to play this knight e4 in. He's, as was seen, Black equalizes with that. And when Black does that, the moment White takes it, the possibility of bishop versus knight is gone. So, and that knight on e4 will be better than the bishop on g2, and I don't see much of a future for that bishop unless it does trade. But anyway, it's still a good game, a lot to be proud of. I like your game. I like just hone it up a little bit, finish your development. Okay, thanks everyone, take care.